see
I
you.
wish I was there with you. It
Yeah, I
looks
know.
awesome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, so good to see you. Hi, everyone.
Hi. So you can introduce yourself, and I just started and didn't even name the title of your presentation.
Okay, very gladly. Not that I have. Well, yes, my name is Sarah Cuminetti, and I'm based in Italy. So, ciao from Italy, as you saw from my video. I had the pleasure of meeting Victoria last year in Geneva, and we really hit it off. And I'm glad to be here now. I am in charge of social media for myself, and I coordinate social media for Interpreti, that is to say, the Italian National Association of Professional in the Conference Interpreters. I'm also in charge of the ATA Italian Language Division Twitter account. I like social media. I do a lot of stuff on social media, but that's not my job. I'm not a social media manager. I'm an interpreter, and I do a lot of stuff on social media. So based on this experience, I've worked a lot on the aspects that are more relevant to us as interpreters when we decide to use social media and to be on social media. And indeed, I also, last year, I launched a survey specifically about confidentiality, because confidentiality is really one of the cornerstones of our profession. And of course, social media and confidentiality, that's kind of a tricky balance to strike. And so indeed, that was it was a pretty interesting well, the results were presented in Geneva, indeed, and there was a poster presentation. There was a lot of interest, and so here I am today, because that's what I'm going to be talking about with you for the next, let's say, 45 minutes. So we leave some time for questions, maybe, and we're going to be talking about social media and how interpreters can use social media and what interpreters should be aware of when using social media.
Great, Sarah. So the floor is yours, and in 45 minutes, I will remind about myself, okay?
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, good luck.
Absolutely. Okay. So first of all, thank you UTIC, the whole team for having me. It's unfortunately I cannot be there in person, but I'm sure that maybe next year, or we'll see. I will absolutely love to be with you. So, social media 101 best practice interpreters. Let's start by telling you what I will not be talking about. So I will not be talking about why you should use social media as, for your business per se. I'm not going to be talking about social media trends for the year, this year, next year, stuff like that. Not what we'll be talking about today. I'm not even going to be talking about social media marketing specifically, because I believe that there's lots of very useful information that you can find online, sometimes for free. Sometimes there are specific publications. Lots of information is available out there, and they can get into great depth and work on specific details of social media marketing. I'm not a social media manager by profession, so I'm sure there's people more qualified than me to tell you about some of the really the intricacies of social media marketing. I'm not going to tell you anything about TikTok. Sorry, I know some of you might be interested because you've heard so much about TikTok. But as you can see here, for example, one of the things about TikTok is, very briefly, that the audience is about 50%, 18 to 24. So it depends what you want to do on social media. I don't think that many of your target individuals out there, the people you want to reach through social media, clients, colleagues, and people like that, I don't think they're aged 18 to 24. So anyway, we don't have time to talk about TikTok right now. And least of all, I'm sorry, maybe some of you would like to know more about this, but we're not going to be talking about the selfie angle. I'm very bad at that, so you'll have to look for this information elsewhere. What are we going to be talking about? We'll be talking about how to manage a relationship, a very intimate relationship between you as an interpreter and social media. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that social media can be a very emotional relationship for you. It can trigger very passionate responses in you. It can be something that you love. It can be something that you hate. It can be something that makes you really mad. It can be something that takes up a lot of your time. And you know, it's also supposed to be something that makes your life better. So this is what we'll be talking about. And let's start by seeing which are the ingredients for a healthy interpreter social media relationship. So pick your plot line. What do I mean by that? So a relationship, you wish it's like a fairy tale, but maybe it's not. And however, you need to more or less know what kind of path you want to go down when you start out. This is true for a relationship, but it's also true for social media. So you need to be aware of what specific platforms have to offer and what you would like to achieve through social media. And this takes me to point number 2, find the right one, because, you know, there's plenty of social media platforms out there, and maybe they're not all the same for you. They have different requirements. They require different approaches, different content, and maybe they're not suitable for the objectives that you set out to achieve. So that is something else that you need to consider beforehand, okay? And then we are interpreters, so we need to speak the right language. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that if you post something on LinkedIn, you should not use the same approach that you use on Twitter. If you post something on Instagram, for example, it's all about image, 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 and it's not the same as Facebook. They look kind of similar, but they're not quite the same. So just like in our job, we should be able to learn the various languages and to speak the various languages. And we'll see later how social media, and let's say LinkedIn maybe, is our native language, or maybe it's an A language, or maybe it's a B or even a C language, who knows. So we're going to be talking about this too. Something else that's very important, be yourself. Be yourself, because there are, of course, many rules, many aspects to consider, but bottom line, there's lots of people out there, and unless you are yourself, you won't stand out at all, and you won't be able to actually contribute anything to what's happening online. And if you don't express yourself also, you're going to come across as, you know, you're not really yourself. You are cheating, maybe. You should never cheat, and you should never cheat online, because social media can, that cheating is going to catch up with you sooner or later, and it's not genuine. Because indeed, and this is actually the last point, you need to keep it real, because you need to know that it may seem that like it's something online, who cares, I can come up with anything, no one's going to check. That's not the case at all, actually. You have to consider that you're communicating with people, and people are very good at picking up on stuff that's not real, okay? So that's something else that you need to consider. And then, like, you know, any relationship, the more passionate, the more this happens, tantrums, you're going to argue, you're going to fight, there's going to be a lot of bickering, there's going to be a lot of discussions going on like that. And that's something else that you should be aware of beforehand, again, because maybe you hate the sort of, let's say, heated discussions, or maybe you hate any controversial statement, or maybe you don't like to manage things that make you uncomfortable. And, well, you need to brace for this kind of stuff if you decide to be on social media, because that's in the nature of social media. But I promise you that if you take care of all the relations, then you live happily ever after. Absolutely. And this actually brings me to a point that is very important when using social media. Now, you see here a pyramid. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It dates back to the early 40s, and it's basically about the needs, human needs, what we as human beings feel we need to live a good life, to feel okay, to be happy. So these aspects are very relevant in our everyday life and are very relevant online too. Let's start from the bottom. So you see that there's this pyramid-shaped triangle that starts with the red physiological, and then we get safety, love, esteem, and self-actualization. What does it mean? It means that from the very basic needs, what is the relevance for social media? Well, for example, it means that we have very physical needs. We want to eat, right? So we go somewhere, we find a restaurant that we like, and this is based on a very physical need. And what do? Maybe we post about that. Consider, for example, TripAdvisor, stuff like that. So we share this information with other people based on our physical need. Safety. Safety is another important aspect, which can be summed up pretty well, for example, with ultimately Facebook's safety check, you know? So, of course, you want to feel safe. So social media allows you, for example, to get lots of information, let's say, when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. Social media was one of the ways for people to know what was going on elsewhere in the world. It was a way for people to know what worked and what didn't work, or what seemed to work or seemed to not work elsewhere in the world. And again, this is thanks to social media. And it's a very physical, very human emotion, very human need that is then transposed online. Then we have love, esteem, and self-actualization, which I will now put together so as not to dwell on this too long. But basically what it means is that when we go online and we do something actively online, we are looking for love, in the sense of we're looking for people who like us. We're looking for people who think we are worthy of their attention. We are looking for people who think we're good at what we do. We're looking for people to confirm our competences. And that is why we post something in many cases, precisely because we need, as human beings, to interact with other human beings in this way. And this it's just shifted online through social media. So my pro tip to right off the bat is, before you start posting on social media, you should understand what your needs are, what your expectations are, what your objectives are. Because if you're not on social media, it's not that like tomorrow you're going to post or tweet and your life is going to change and you're going to be like a superstar of social media. That's not how it works. You need to actually know what you set out to do in order to know how to achieve certain goals. And in order to do so, just like any other business venture, because keep this in mind, we're talking about a business approach to social media for interpreters. We're not talking about interpreters just flipping through images on Instagram and stuff and liking cats and stuff like that. We can do that, but that's a different thing. What we're talking about here is using social media as interpreters. So using social media to gain visibility, to gain online reputation, for networking, maybe to learn about stuff that's going on in the field. So you need to have a professional approach to social media in general. And this, of course, means that you need to know what your USP, your unique selling proposition, is all about. What are you offering out there? What are you giving the word? Why are you asking the word to look at you or to read your tweets or your posts or whatever? You need to have something solid to offer, right? And that is something, of course, you can just share pictures and just share comments and stuff like that. But if you want to actually create content and really make a difference and build your own reputation online, that is something that you need to have very clear in your mind right from the start. You also need, very objectively, to consider what you like and what you don't like. Of course, you will, if you want to work on social media, you can just consider any social media, okay? But that would be scattering your resources and your attention across the board instead of channeling all your efforts towards something you're really good at. So, for example, if you hate watching yourself in pictures, for example, you hate your pictures of yourself, then maybe Instagram is not such a good idea because you're not going to be instinctively good at it, right? If you are extremely informal when you talk, when you communicate, when you write, then maybe LinkedIn is not such a good idea. Or you need to know how to, let's say, change register when you post something on LinkedIn. And likes and dislikes also concerns your audience because remember, we're talking about you, but we're also talking about what you set out to do. And you need to consider what your audience is looking for and what you can expect from your audience in terms of reaction to what you're going to post. So this is all the things that you should consider in a very human, let's say, kind of way. And then, of course, as I was saying earlier, many of us, unfortunately, are not so young as to be digital natives. And so social media, anything digital, is not our native language. We weren't born using Facebook and stuff. Many of you maybe are, and that's good. It's great. It's like being bilingual. You speak like real everyday language and digital languages. That's awesome. It's a great asset. But if you don't, like me, for example, then you need to learn how to use it. You need to learn it like you need to learn English or French or German. You need to learn as much as you can about what that language requires. And maybe you understand the language, but you don't feel comfortable enough to speak the language. And then you need to be very much aware as an interpreter of your own level of familiarity with this kind of language. So, you don't want to speak a language you're not proficient in, right? So you shouldn't be speaking a C language to the world if you're not familiar with it, not good enough, right? So that is something that you should indeed consider before posting something online. Not fast for the interpreter. Please forgive me if I'm going too fast. Now, another important point that you need to consider, time. Time is of the essence. What do I mean by that? If you look at this slide, it says that indeed, on average, people using social networks last year spent almost an hour and a half online. But this is not business social media. This is social media, period. So that means that if you plan on using social media, then you're going to spend your 1 hour and a half on Facebook looking at what your friends are doing, how cool the beach they are on is, and stuff like that. You need to work because you probably need to be an interpreter. That's what we are, or a translator, if I know there are many translators over there too. And on top of it all, of actually living your life in real life, you need to manage your social media professionally for business. So, and mind you, social media done right requires a lot of effort. It requires planning. It requires creation of interesting content. It requires keeping tabs on what people are doing, keeping an eye on your competition, on what's going on in the field. So it's very time consuming. And you should be really careful and plan whatever it is that you want to do very carefully, because indeed time can really become a tricky issue. And again, you should also keep it precisely because it's 1 hour and a half that you already spent on social media. You want to make it very clear to yourself in your head how much time you're going to use of that slot of time that you devote to social media during your day. How much of that time is going to be devoted exclusively to business social media, let's say, because otherwise it's going to be overwhelming and you really are at risk of some kind of social media burnout. And that's something that we're going to be talking about later because it's very real indeed. But okay, so maybe you're saying, okay, so this is all good and well, Sarah, but so I don't know what I should do. Which social media platform should I pick? So we hear, I'm sure you do too, I've heard a lot, recently we've heard all about Twitter, we've heard all about Facebook, and which is going up, which is going down. We've heard a lot about TikTok and stuff. So this is a very interesting snapshot of the current situation that you can see comes from the social media marketing from the socialmediaexaminer.com website. And as you can see, no matter how controversial Zuckerberg may be, Facebook is still definitely still gets the lion's share of the market, followed by Instagram, LinkedIn, which of course is slightly different because, again, this is a survey of among social media managers for marketing purposes. So it's not just people posting stuff about CAS, okay? It's a little different. But indeed, people who deal with marketing online, this is what they do. They like Facebook and then Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on and so forth. TikTok, not so much, as you can see. And this can help you choose because really, we hear so much about TikTok, okay? Honestly, me too. I started considering what to do with TikTok, because if it works, why not? There's lots of fun stuff to watch on TikTok, right? Maybe you can become the next superstar, the interpreter superstar of TikTok. Why not? That's something that you can consider, of course. But if you look at this, 16% of marketers plan on increasing their TikTok organic activities, which is fine. But take a look at this super big chunk, the red chunk. That is like 3/4 of the pie. And these people do not plan to use TikTok for marketing purposes. They're still going to look at videos and of cats and dogs and stuff, but not for marketing purposes. So this is some kind of indication, and that's why I told you that there's lots of information out there that you can find for yourself before that help you decide what to do and how to channel your resources correctly, because this information is out there for free, basically. So this is why you should consider what to do before investing a lot of time, putting a lot of effort, and creating the most fantastic TikTok account profile ever, and then it's not worth it because it's not going to actually bring home any kind of significant result, not the stuff that you're looking for, right? And this, again, this is interesting because here, the most important social platform for marketers is what? It's Facebook, and I think they picked blue for a reason here, but it's Facebook, and never mind the fact that, as you can see here, compared to last year, Facebook dropped from 61 to 59%, Instagram grew from 14% to 17%, and Twitter actually declined from 4% to 3%. Facebook is still the most significant social media platform that you can use. So for marketers, again. So this is just to give you an idea of where we stand today. As I said, I'm not going to get into specifics when it comes to social media marketing, but this is just to give you an idea, because maybe you're there and you're saying, okay, let's see what Sarah has to say. Maybe I am going to start working on my social media because she has some revelation that's going to change my life. I don't think so. But anyway, in case you're wondering, Facebook is still there. And so no matter how much criticism you hear against it, no matter all the arguments against it, this is where we stand today. Now, also, you can use social media in different ways. As I said earlier, when you go online, there are many ways you can make the most of what social media has to offer. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to put yourself out there. Maybe you don't like to do so. Maybe you don't want to expose yourself, your text, your everything to just be there, and people are going to look at you. Maybe that makes you uncomfortable. You're afraid of, I told you all about using the right language and this and that. So maybe now you're all concerned and you say, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should not post that. What if I do something wrong? So this is absolutely okay. But honestly, while I never want to tell anyone what they should do, I do think that it's important to enable you, to empower you, to provide you with some information that then you can use the way you think best for yourself. So I'm not going to tell you which is best. I'm not you. I don't know what is best for you. What I can tell you is that even if you don't like to post about yourself or to post content you create for yourself, there's still a lot that you can get from social media. And you would be really missing out on a lot of opportunities if you don't, if you decide to reject social media altogether, because you can just very passively get all the information out of social media. You just need to create an account. And that's something that takes 5 minutes. And you don't even need to post anything, tweet anything. You just sit back and decide who to follow, and that's it. And you can start learning about what's going on in the field, which events are happening in the field, which developments are happening in the field. If you are on social media, you know how much people are talking about, for example, remote interpreting and remote interpreting solutions. That's all the rage nowadays. Okay, so if you are online, you can get access, free access to lots of information. You can also get access to information that people are actually giving out for free that they probably shouldn't if they were a little wiser, a little more strategically minded. What do I mean? That when people post things about I don't know, pictures of themselves, for example. And this brings me back to the famous remote interpreting thing. So what happens? Okay, it's cool to post pictures about of yourself working and remotely, and that's great. And I mean, you should do what feels right for you. Maybe that is what you set out to do and you like it. So that's fine. But be aware that what you're doing is telling your colleagues, one, of course, that you're working, two, what kind of computer you're using, three, what kind of headset you're using, 4, 5, 6, you're telling people a lot of stuff about you professionally. And you're giving out this information for free. So just be aware that this is something, that this is what you're doing, because other people may be watching, may be taking note. And indeed, that's what you can do. You can take note of what other people are doing if you're using social media passively. Another passive use of social media that you can engage in is joining groups. Groups generally bring together professionals from the same field, from the same professional sector, let's say. So if you go on LinkedIn, if you go on Facebook, there are groups that allow you to just see what's going on. Because people post relevant articles that are relevant to the profession, maybe stuff updates, and there's discussion going on. And again, it's just like being at a party and you don't want to talk with anyone. You're just sitting back and maybe sipping some cocktail or something there in the corner and looking around and see what's going on. But you're going to learn a lot of information if you do so. Well, the same is true for social media. So groups, joining a group doesn't mean that you necessarily have to contribute to the discussion, but it means that you're there. And so that you can learn a lot of stuff. You can, if you want to, you can also start networking with colleagues, but you don't have to. And then there is the classic, let's say, trick that you can use. I promised that I would share some tips, so I have to share some tips. But anyway, something that you can do, because maybe you're saying, yeah, okay, Sarah, you're right. But okay, I don't know how Twitter works. I hate Twitter. I don't know how it works. I'm not comfortable. Nobody knows me. I don't know anyone. So how do I start out? Well, one way to do so is you certainly know a few people who are in the business, maybe even people, that you know physically. Because some of your colleagues in real life are surely on social media. So what you can do is once you open an account, you create a profile for yourself, is go look at their profile and see who they follow. Maybe in turn, you will find interesting people to follow. And that's, for example, how you can expand your network, because then some of those people are going to follow you back. And this is how things work. The same is true for LinkedIn, for example, because sometimes you can just look at connections other people have and go like, oh, this guy sounds interesting, or this girl sounds interesting, so I'm going to try and connect with this person. And that is, I think, a very good use of a passive use of social media that indeed has a lot to offer for you. Also considering what you're seeing here. That is to say, why and what people share on social media. This is the psychology of social sharing, brings us back to what I was showing you a minute ago. That is to say, this is what you can find online because people like to share this stuff online. People share valuable content, of course, hopefully. That's what we like most of all. People define themselves online by sharing specific things. And that's why you like some of those people and you don't like some of those people. So consider, for example, now we don't have a lot of time, but if we did, I would ask you to go to any of your social media accounts and find one account, one person that you really like. Just like that. Don't think about it. Just the first name that comes to mind. And then once you do, you can do this at home or maybe later tonight, whenever. And then you just try and understand why you like this person so much. What is it that makes this person stand out? There's millions of accounts, millions of profiles out there. Why do you like this person so much? This is a very useful exercise because it allows you to focus and to put in greater focus the kind of person that you would like to be yourself online. And it's a useful exercise because there's plenty of tips that just looking at those accounts, well, you can learn from people you like online and you can be a little more like them. Of course, everything has to be, you have to make everything your own, but you can find inspiration out there. And this is a passive attitude, but you can also be active. However, being active comes with a lot of baggage, let's say, because this is the content matrix by Smart Insights. It was a project launched together with the New York Times. And this is a kind of, let's say, this graph allows you to break down content by type. So content should be entertaining, inspiring, educational, or convincing, And when you're called to create content, you have to take this into account. Being active means that you need to doing something, just like in real life, means that you may get criticized for what you do. Only instead of doing it, in your, in your circle among your friends, in your circle of friends, you're doing it with a global audience before a global audience. So that's something you need to be aware of. Maybe no one will notice, but you need to be aware of this. So how can you be active if you want to be active? Maybe you want to improve your social media presence. Okay, you can interact with the groups that we mentioned a minute ago. So if you interact, if you post in, for example, on groups on LinkedIn or Facebook, that's going to make you more well-known among other professionals. You can reach out. So maybe you found a famous account that you love, that one person who's so great. So you can actually reach out to that person and saying, hey, I think your presentation at that conference was awesome. Thank you for doing this. Or maybe you can share a picture. You can tag that person. And that is also a very effective way to, get things moving, to get the ball rolling. That's how you grow, how you meet new people. Crediting is very important for your reputation. There is a social media netiquette that you need to be aware of, and crediting people for their work instead of pretending that it's your own, that is fundamental. And indeed, that's something that sometimes gets overlooked, and sometimes you do it unintentionally. That's fine, especially at first. It's a little hard to get into this mindset, but it's something that you should always remember to do on social media. And then there's engagement. Engagement, as I said, is it means involving other people, getting other people's attention somehow, generally by tagging them. And then maybe you're lucky and these people are going to attention. Maybe they won't. Maybe they won't like what you had to say. Who knows? But whatever happens, even negative reactions can still help you gain a more solid reputation, more visibility. A lot of aspects there's a lot of things that can come from this kind of interaction. Now, effective engagement is, I'm going to give you an example of effective engagement that has to do with our keynote speaker, Jonathan Downey. We had the pleasure of listening to Jonathan yesterday, and I have to say, Jonathan being Italian, I'm more of a Ferrari kind of interpreter than a limousine one, but I totally see your point. So anyway, this is what happened. Yesterday, Jonathan tweeted, he tweeted about Andre. So Jonathan tweeted about someone else, and he didn't tag Andre because you can't win them all. Even Jonathan Downey sometimes, you know. I love you, Jonathan. So anyway, Andre said something in his presentation about Julia Pogar's Know Your Worth. So Jonathan tweeted about it, right? What happened? So Jonathan on Twitter has about 3,200 followers. Andrew has 237, but he joined just like last year, and probably he's not super active. So he has his own followers. And then Jonathan tagged UTICamp. UTICamp has 697 followers. Maybe some are the same as the ones who follow Jonathan, but not so. Probably not all of them are, you know, in the same group. So we're talking about 3,210 for Jonathan, 237 for Andre, and 700 more or less for UTICamp. To which Julia responded, because Julia replied, tagging Andre and thanking Jonathan, and by responding, of course, UTICamp was involved in this whole exchange, and Victoria Morris liked it, as you can see. Julia Pogar has 1,500 followers. Okay, so Jonathan tweeted a 3.5-line tweet yesterday mentioning 2 other people and a conference that was not his own. I mean, he was there, but, you know, he had already spoken, so it was not something that he was doing for himself. And for free, he got tremendous visibility because everyone following him, Andre, UTIC, and Julia, and Victoria, because then Victoria liked it, and people know that Victoria liked this. Maybe you would like it too. So with like a 2-minute effort, Jonathan, who's very good at using social media, created some kind of cascade effect that is absolutely stunning. So you can see why I'm saying that there is tremendous potential with social media, doing not that much. I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can use it to your own advantage. And the reason now, any of you, tweet about the fact that Sarah Translate mentioned in her presentation the whole thing. So me, I'm the ultimate free rider because actually I'm going to be mentioned after everyone else has tweeted. And so 0 effort, maximum result. I mean, isn't that great? I'm joking, of course. But you see my point here, right? So Jonathan was extremely clever in his use of social media. And he devoted very little time to that tweet, but he's familiar with Twitter. He knows how things work. And this is the amazing result that he got. So, you know, I thought this was a great thing he did, and it was a perfect example for what I was trying to convey to you today. And of course, then something else that I mentioned very briefly earlier, that is to say, make sure that everyone knows it's you. You want to be an influencer, maybe you don't, but influencer is a word that's been around according to Merriam-Webster since the late 1600s. So it's not just about being an influencer online, but indeed, what it boils down to is that you are what you post. People across the world are going to see what you post, and people across the world have never met you. So they don't know what's behind the image that you're projecting out there. To them, you are that thing. You are that picture. You are that little something that you posted online. So think before you post is what people will think you are all about. So, and then it's hard to make their mind. Speaking of which, and this brings me to what I was mentioning earlier, this is the famous study that I conducted last year, the survey about social media and interpreters, with a special focus on confidentiality. Confidentiality is one of the pillars of our profession, but online, well, things have... Now, of course, a lot of attention has been given to social media and confidentiality online. UTIC talked about it, and other associations talked about it. And, it was in the news when there was that whole thing about President Trump and the interpreter. And so confidentiality, came out like one of the priorities. And what happened is that basically I tried to take the pulse of the situation in terms of what people consider confidentiality. Because, if you, it used to be that confidentiality meant, yeah, I'm working at this meeting, I shouldn't share the presentation, I shouldn't take pictures of the presentations, I shouldn't use that information in any way, or any information related to this assignment I cannot disclose, and blah, blah, blah. But what is confidentiality on social media? And I think this is one of the crucial issues that I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but I asked this question for you so that we can all start to become more aware of what confidentiality can mean. Because indeed, confidentiality may not just be about not disclosing the information contained in a PowerPoint presentation. It may be about the people you're taking pictures of in a room, back when those days, the glorious days when we could be physically in the same room. But, you're disclosing information. So even if you post stuff about remote interpreting assignments, be careful. Because maybe it's true you're not showing PowerPoint presentations, but maybe you're showing names of people that shouldn't be there. So confidentiality is absolutely one of the tenets of our profession, and we cannot in any way break our commitment towards our client and towards ourselves, of course. And just for the record, in the picture, you can see Professor Baigori, who is amazing and had this fantastic keynote in Geneva. And that's me, and that's Victoria. And you see that I wasn't lying about meeting Victoria in Geneva. Now, I need to wrap this up. Use your brain, but I'm almost done, no worries. So use your brain. What does it mean? It means that indeed, people are starting to pay attention. People are starting to realize that social media has very real consequences, very physical consequences even. And for example, this very interesting study by King University, you can download it for free. It's The Psychology of Social Media. What does it say? It's very interesting what it says. It says when social media users receive positive feedback, when you like a post, when someone likes one of your posts, your dopamine receptors, just the brain fires off dopamine receptors. That means that the post on social media can actually generate a physical chemical reaction. So you see that the implications of this are remarkable because you cannot control the physical reactions of your body. And indeed, as you can see here, this again is something you can find in the report. People are developing social media habits that can benefit and harm their mental health. And this brings me to the last topic topic that I want to touch upon in my presentation. That is to say, the flip side of the coin, the stuff that is not so pleasant about social media, because it's something that indeed you need to be aware of if you are to actually use social media constructively and to feel at ease using social media. The quote that you see on the right, that comes from a law blog. Because, managing reputation online is so tricky that you can get sued for stuff you post online. You can lose a job for stuff you post online. And indeed, what you see here is a definition of my beloved HipDic, the Hip Dictionary, and has... social media has made too many comfortable with disrespecting others and not getting punched in the mouth for it. And that is true, indeed, because online, it's like our barriers, the constraints that we feel we're subject to most of the time in real life. Well, we don't feel these constraints as if they applied online. And we feel sometimes free to express our opinions in ways that not being in real life, not being there in person, but only writing something can come across as incredibly offensive, also can be misunderstood, misinterpreted. And that is something that you need to be aware of. It's one of the famous B languages and that you need to be aware of. And A language, if you want to post stuff that you need to be familiar with, because otherwise you might get in trouble because you post something that people perceive in a negative way. Negative effects of social media, so many negative effects of social media. As I said, social media burnout is a thing. It's a problem, a very serious issue among teenagers, for example. That's something else that you can find in the famous study that I mentioned a few slides back. But bottom line, if you use social media wrong, that's going to be bad for yourself, for your health. And you set out to use social media for your business as an interpreter, right? So be very careful that this does not actually lead to negative consequences for you. A useful way to get around these issues is actually having the famous reality check buddy. That is to say, someone who's not on social media that much and who can put everything in perspective for you. Because sometimes you tend to just see everything as if that was all that mattered, as if your whole life revolves around social media and what happens online. That's not the case, okay? But it's very hard sometimes not to get too involved and to get too emotional about this stuff. Online is not offline. So even if you're mad because someone wrote something about you that made you mad online, you can still just turn off your computer or just turn off your phone, go out, get ice cream, relax, have fun with your friends, and most of all, don't neglect the people around you because you want to be on social media. That would be really bad in real life. That's one of the bad things about being online. And virtual has lots of consequences, however, on your very real life. So if you post something bad, then it is your reputation. I don't know, you post something that maybe is not in line with you're a member of an association, you post something that's not in line with the ethics of that association, you're going to get in trouble for that. But you're not going to get in trouble online, you're going to get in trouble offline. So in a way, there's a dark side to ourselves when we are online because social media can bring out the worst in us. And there's a dark side also to social media per se. So how do we keep this relationship healthy? And I'm basically wrapping this up with one more slide and we're done. Stephanie Sarkis provides a number of tips. I just summarized some of the most relevant here. Keep track of time, very important. I know it sounds very silly and obvious, it's not. Keep track of time, the time you devote to these activities. Then avoid a comparison trap. Very easy for us to do, especially now. For example, one thing that happened very recently was during the COVID pandemic, Italy was one of the first countries to be really in huge trouble at first. What was happening, for example, in the States, was nothing, because at the very first weeks, nothing was happening in the States. So us Italians were actually, when looking at social media, we saw all these nice pictures of interpreters going to work, going to a conference, doing this, doing that, and we couldn't believe it. And it made us crazy. And we started, maybe some of us were going like, oh my God, I'm not working. Look, these people are working. Or the same happens, for example, nowadays with people who post a lot of pictures about remote interpreting assignment. And you go like, I'm not working. Oh my God. And this is it's the end of my career. And it's not. Okay, it's just someone posting pictures. It has nothing to do with you and your career. You need to be very concrete, very down to earth. Okay, but it's a very perverse dynamic that you can get trapped into if you are online a lot. Something else, one social media platform that could restrict, limit the number of inputs that you get from the outside. Very important. Turn notifications off. Do it. I know it's hard, but do it so that it's not the platform that comes to you. It's you deciding when to go to the platform. Very important. Get active offline. Do something constructive for your profession outside of social media, outside of the internet. Very important. Plan an unplug day. I confess to you, I generally plan an unplug week or even a month. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't know that I can do that. And then something else that someone thought was very interesting was trick your brain. Trick your brain. The brain plays a big role in social media and how we react with stuff online. Well, let's trick our brain because, for example, studies have shown that if you turn your phone to black and white mode, that is less of a stimulus for your brain to actually be attracted to what you're seeing. So black and white is a very good trick that you can use. So in closing, learn the rules. This is what I wanted to do here today. I just wanted to give you some kind of, let's say, framework so that you know how to move around, because you know what happens when you do something. Not because I tell you to or not to, but because you know that if you do this, you might get that. But if you do this other thing, maybe you'll get in trouble, or, but then it's up to you. And the most important thing is just know the rules, so then you can break them like an artist, because ultimately what really works online is being yourself, because otherwise you'll never stand out. And having said that, it's got to be fun. So if someone doesn't like you, too bad. There's plenty of other people out there who are going to like you. Don't lose any sleep over this kind of stuff. And with this, I'm done. I, first of all, apologize to the interpreters for going so fast. I know what it feels like. I'm sorry. And thanks for your great work. Then I wish to thank all of you for your attention. I wish to thank, of course, the fantastic UTICamp team. And in particular, let me thank Aliona. Thank you for all the emails, and Vic and the Alexanders who have helped us out. I wish to thank my own tech team, because if everything went well today, that's thanks to them, not to me only. So thanks to all of them. And you can reach out, keep in touch with me, and these are some of my handles and my accounts. You can follow me on Facebook, my professional page, not my private page, because my personal page as an individual is for real life friends, and there's nothing about my work. But the other one is a professional page where I would really like to interact with you, and you're welcome to come and tell me what you thought of this presentation, for example. And then there's my website and all. And bottom line, I hope that you're feeling a little more comfortable when it comes to social media, and post wisely. That's what I always say. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Finished.
Sarah, thank you very much. I didn't stop it because it was such a brilliant and warm presentation, so I didn't dare to stop it. And thank you very much for the cascade effect case. And there are 2 new tweets mentioning you on Twitter.
Oh, yay, thank you.
Thank you. And let's ask for the questions.
Yeah.
Natalia.
Thank you. My name is Natalia Gronova. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I personally found it very useful. I have the following question. I work with 2 languages, with English and Greek. And I would like to ask you, what do you think? Should I create 2 profiles on 2 different languages? Or should I write this simple thing like English below or Greek below, and then create posts mentioning whatever I want in 2 languages? If you recommend to organize 2 different profiles mentioned in 2 different languages, what social networks would you prefer and would you recommend? Thanks very much.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm glad that you found this presentation useful. I have many Greek friends, so particularly glad to hear this. So that's a very good question. You see, I'm Italian, so I have the same problem. Because what do? Some of my followers, most of them, of course, speak English, but sometimes it's nice to localize, to make it more relevant to a specific target audience. That is a very good question. Based on the fact that we're not social media managers, we're interpreters, we have limited time, we have limited resources, we don't have a marketing department to rely on, I would recommend to keep it simple. So what you can do is, if someone doesn't understand Greek and you only post in Greek, then that would be a pity, because you're actually restricting your potential audience. So I would say what I do generally is, if I think that something might be relevant to Italy only, but that's just a rule of thumb, and just telling you what I think is right, because there's no specific rule. I'm sure there's studies showing this is the right thing to do or that is the right thing to do, but here's my take. When there's something about, like in your case, Greece, maybe you can post it in Greek, giving it some kind of local flavor, so making it relevant for your fellow countrymen. And if it's something that it might also be relevant to people outside of Greece, make it accessible. And so you can maybe post different things about maybe the same thing that are a little different. Because, for example, I don't speak Greek. So if you post in Greek, I won't be able to read it. Maybe I can use the little translate thing, but it's not going to really work for me. So I think it's more, again, an effort on your part. Honestly, I think that you have to be very realistic. It would be great to have a Greek account, and sometimes it's not even legal to have 2 separate accounts, on the same platform for the same person, same everything, just different languages. But again, the situation is always evolving. So I would say, make the most of the little time and the little resources you have available that you are already devoting to your online activity. And that's what I would say. So 1 account, and then it's up to you to decide when to write in Greek, when to write in English. And maybe if something is really basic, you can just put it like a slash in the middle and just kind of make it accessible. Because bottom line, unless you aim to be like the influencer, I think, or you are the influencer, what you're doing is communicating. So again, you need to consider these very practical aspects.
Thank you, Sarah. We have one more question.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Marina Mintsikovska, and thanks for your brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question about KPIs, about key performance indicator. So we heed your advice, and we invest all this effort and time into our social media marketing. So how do we know we're doing well? Is it the number of followers?
Right.
Is it the number of jobs? Is it something else? Thanks.
This is a very good question, and indeed, here comes another acronym from marketing, indeed. So, as I said, today, unfortunately, at 1 hour, I already went on for an hour, so I already spoke way too much. But indeed, there are all sorts of things that you can, again, find online to understand how to take stock of what you're doing. Now, what I can tell you is that it all depends on what you set out to do. So if you set out to say, I don't know, when I started out, for example, on Twitter, I knew nothing about Twitter. I was a late comer, and I said, I don't know what I want to do here. So my first objective was not about followers. It It was about, I want to know who are, let's call them the influencers on Twitter. So I set this objective for myself, and I started working towards this end. I started looking, I started finding, and at some point I realized that I wanted to follow this, this, and this, and if that one person said something, people listened. So that must be an influencer. And that allowed me, for example, to just set the groundwork for what I would then do more actively online. And then I set another objective for myself. So what I do recommend is that it's very hard, for example, for me to judge how much work I get from social media. I work a lot in consecutive, you know. So working in consecutive, especially in literary events, so you're on stage, people see you on stage, people post about you on stage, maybe translating, maybe the writer is famous, so that gives you a lot of visibility. I have no way of knowing, however, with some exceptions, which jobs later have come to me because someone posted that thing online. So it's while there are some very marketing-oriented ways to calculate if this is working, that is working, you can just tag this and do that and increase number of followers. These are very nice because they're very easy to count, and that's okay. But if you are just aiming to gain a stronger reputation online, maybe, how do you quantify that, you know? So I think it all depends on what you set out to do, and then based on that, you can identify relying also on maybe on marketing tools and marketing data and this kind of stuff, marketing strategies mostly. And then based on the objective that you set for yourself and on the platform that you choose, then you can say, okay, in 6 months' time, I want to know if this worked and how much money I made thanks to Twitter, say. But you need to have a clear analysis of your starting point and a number of factors that change person to person, moment to moment, and depending on your goals. So that would be my answer.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We have one more question left. Very interesting question. We will send it to you because unfortunately, we cannot continue as Rob Davidson is waiting for us already. Thank you very much. It was so nice to see you.
Thank you.
And let's all go to
me
Twitter.
Too.
Just continue our cascade effect.
Absolutely, and I'll follow you on Twitter. And everybody, let's tweet about UTIC because UTIC Camp is just great. I'm so sorry I cannot be with you guys. Thank you, Victoria, so much.
Hope
Thank you,
to see you here one day. Bye.
Absolutely. Ciao. Bye.